I just feel like maybe I should introduce myself more to people. I don't like doing that every time. It's like, hey, my name's Alexis.
That's fair
Welcome to
though.
the podcast.
It's because I know you that I was like, oh, it's Alexis.
Yeah.
Duh. Yeah.
But for like people that maybe don't know me and they happen to listen, then they're like, who the fuck is this girl? You
Yeah.
know? Like, who?
Why is she doing a podcast?
Who is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, my name's Alexis, and welcome to the podcast. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Javier Hernandez Kistte.
Cool. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Mexico City, um, but I came here when I was 8 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I did know that, but now that you reminded me, I'm just like, oh yeah.
It goes. Yeah, I feel like it goes by people because everyone's like, Javier's from LA, because I think the accent, like,
Yeah,
even though we don't think we have an accent,
we do.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I for sure do.
Yeah.
I like say like a lot.
We do. And
Yeah.
then it's like a little bit of like that, I guess, like surf, like very chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I always sound like I'm high, so everybody thinks that I'm high.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
It's like a slow pace that
Yeah.
I talk.
I didn't tell you this before we started the podcast, but this is my second interview today.
Nice. Look at you.
Yeah.
Celebrity.
So I did one for like this newspaper in Mexico City,
Okay.
and like they contacted me through relatives and stuff, and they just wanted to ask what it was like for an immigrant in the United States. So they were interviewing other people, and I just went in and they asked me.
Cool. Where was it at?
Weirdly enough, it was you know where the New Beverly is?
The New Beverly?
That theater on Beverly, like that movie, the old movie theater.
I don't know.
It's like by Lakma-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, so by Lakma, like
Yeah.
kind of by there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Closer to the west side.
Yeah, because there's some taco stand there that they interviewed the owner.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so what did they ask you?
So their whole thing was they wanted to ask like a diversity of people who are immigrants that are from Mexico, what life is like for them here.
What'd you say?
LA's expensive.
You're like, it could be better.
It definitely could be better. They, it was a lot of questions about the current state of immigration and a lot of stuff because I'm DACA, and so they wanted to ask me like, oh, what's it like being DACA and what is it exactly, and can you
elaborate on it? Yeah, cool. Did you like the interview?
Yeah, they were cool.
How long was it?
It was like 5 minutes or something.
Oh,
yeah.
It was a short interview.
Yeah, I think because it's gonna be like a news thing because
so it has to be like a short segment or something.
Yeah,
that's cool. Also, I just want to mention, this is what I was gonna say, is that I'm talking very low and my chair is very low because this mic was not having it with me. So for anybody watching this, that's why we look
disproportionate.
Yeah, disproportionate. That's a good word. I learn a lot of words like when I do these interviews. Not learn, but I'm like, oh, that's a word I should use in my vocabulary.
Nice. Yeah. Getting ready for
local interviews. Government. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. This budget's disproportionate.
Yes. Okay, so you came here at 8 years old. Do you remember anything like from when you were a kid?
Yeah, I remember Mexico very vividly, and I think I'm strange in that sense because I identify myself more from over there than over here.
Why?
I think because of my family and how much they ingrained in me.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunts made an effort to come see me and my brother here as much as they could, and so I think that never left me. And whenever I've had the opportunity to go, which isn't often, I'm always like, oh shit, I'm from here. Like it feels like it.
Yeah.
How
do people react when you say you work in the film industry? Do people become nicer to you when you say that?
I think it depends. I don't know.
Like if you're talking to like a white person that's from like the Midwest or something, do they start to be nicer to you?
If they live in LA, usually because they're usually here to do something in the film industry,
Right.
and they're usually trying to get something out of me.
Yeah,
Yeah, where they're
totally.
like, oh, you work in the film industry. Here's my headshot,"
Yeah.
or like,
Let me
"Oh,
get your number. What's your Instagram?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly."
for sure. Um, I can like say that that happened to me several times when like I don't know when I was doing events, people like thought like I was something, or they would think me and Johan were like something like in
Yeah.
the entertainment industry, and then they would start being nicer to
You,
us.
yeah, I can confirm you guys are pretty legit though. So I would feel like, oh, here's my card too. I mean, I guess I did that too
Cool.
because I remember I helped you guys out
Yeah, I
a bit.
remember. Um, Thanks for helping us.
I got
That
in
shit
there.
was crazy.
That shit was
Like, how
crazy.
did like? I mean, obviously we had our friends that like helped us out and stuff, but like, I don't know how the fuck we did that.
I still to this day don't know either, and I know people that went to it that were like people still talk about it. It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah, people still talk about it. Yeah,
No way.
yeah.
Johan's told me that people still talk about it, but I don't want to believe it. I like to think that Johan just says things.
No, it's funny. I can confirm like people that went to it were always like, "Oh yeah, did he ever go to this event?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, I know the people that did
That
it.
organized
It's
it. They
crazy."
like did that shit for free. They didn't
It's
get
like
paid for any of it. Yeah.
that was the big part.
Yeah, which is important.
Yeah,
It kept like the authenticity of just what we were trying to do and stuff. Um, and I think it was really fun to do that with, work with different people too.
yeah.
But let's not talk about us.
Let's
'Cause,
not remember the past.
yeah. Okay, so how did you get into the film industry?
Hmm. I went to school for film,
Yeah.
um, which you would think, oh, that's how you get in, but that's not how you
It's
get
not.
in.
Okay,
No,
so
at
would you
all.
tell people to go to school for film if they want to work in film?
I think at best the thing to do is to get an AA. If like old me is like
Yeah, like
thinking
looking
about,
back and stuff,
yeah,
what would you do?
because I went to community college too, and I think what I learned in community college was a lot more valuable than what I learned in when I got my bachelor's.
Interesting.
Um,
What
I
did you learn when you got your bachelor's?
I think in my bachelor's it was a lot of reading and a lot of writing.
Okay.
I think a lot of people have similar experiences. Where my AA was a lot more technical. I feel like because I just kind of went and did whatever when I was in community college. I feel like it gives you an opportunity to explore and learn things that you wouldn't otherwise without the pressure of like, oh, this is costing me a lot of money over
Yeah,
time.
I get that.
Yeah.
I think that's what like the beauty of community college is.
Yeah.
Like some people try to like, oh, you didn't get accepted to college. But community college is cool because you actually get to find more about yourself and like learn more without the pressure of like, now I need to do something with this.
Yeah. And I had a lot of teachers in high school who went to community college too, and they recommended it very highly because they were like, when they went to get their bachelor's, they were like, I felt like I was a lot more prepared than the other people that were in the same like classes that I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, like people that just like graduate high school and then go to university
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. Because I also think they don't have that maturity to like really appreciate where they are, like what they're doing, and like kind of like that focus too.
yeah, exactly. And I think because you also get to explore in community college, you get a chance to figure out what you like and what you don't. So by the time you're getting your bachelor's, it's like, oh, this is what I want to do,
Yeah,
so let me do it.
yeah,
You know?
for sure. I agree. That happened to me in community college, and I'm still glad that I went, even though I don't know if I'm really doing anything with that degree, but at least I did something that I like to do and I'm interested in, and yeah, that's what's important. But I know that in the entertainment industry, a lot of people kind of just like learn on the job, right?
It's it's very true. Um, that. it's better to just, if you have the opportunity to get in, to just do it and learn, because it's a whole different world. And at the end of the day, I think, even because I work when I went to college, I think that work experience was more valuable to me working in the film industry than going to school was.
Yeah.
Because in my industry, there's a lot of politics and there's a lot of dealing with personalities, and especially big personalities.
When you say politics, what do you mean?
I mean that there's a lot of like, I think we should do this and this is why, and then someone else will be like, no, I think we should do this and these are my reasons. I mean, a lot of times they're not as nice about it. There's a lot of fighting in the film industry. There's a lot of big personalities. It's not easy. So I think learning to work with other people, like, you know, a lot of the people that I've worked with in the film industry always like compare it to group projects in school,
Okay.
where it's like you're put in a group of people, like they just randomly choose a group of people, and then they're like, here, make something. And then you have all these different personalities, and you'll have people that literally are just there, not do anything,
What?
and then get credit, like in school, remember?
Yeah. What's the point of having them there then?
It There's a lot of nepotism in the film
Oh,
industry.
yeah, let's talk about nepotism. We don't have to talk about it right now, but that's like one of my things that like it's just so obnoxious.
Yeah, that there's a lot of it in my industry, and I was lucky. I work with a guy that taught me a lot about the industry and taught me a lot of technical things.
So how did you start off? Like,
So
sorry, I cut you off.
no, you're good.
Okay,
We'll circle, but
go ahead.
let's do it. So I graduated school, um, and what happened was I started coaching soccer because I had nothing else to do, and um, so I was just coaching soccer and doing like other jobs and stuff, and then a friend of mine, I'll give you the longer story. So when I was in
We
school,
have time.
when I was in school, I worked at the W Hotel in Hollywood,
Okay,
and it was a horrible job, and it taught me a lot about working with people. And
I bet.
I made a friend with this. We're still friends to this day. Her name's Jennifer. She's awesome, really funny person. She also studied film, but we both kind of like went our own paths. And then when I graduated school, she had already started her job at a VFX company. And so she posted on Facebook saying, at the time I was coaching kid soccer, she was like, hey, does anybody need a job? The company I work for is hiring. They need a PA receptionist, someone who could just roll with the punches.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I'll go. And so I go in an interview, and I think I got very lucky in the sense that she gave me the opportunity to go in because she like recommended me highly because we had worked together, and
Yeah.
she
She
knew
knew you.
what I was about. And so I went in, and I got very lucky that the owner of the company, um, his name's Matt Beck. He goes way back, man. He's like he worked on the original Dune.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I
Never,
still haven't seen Dune 2. My boyfriend keeps telling me to.
I I haven't seen it either. I want
Okay.
to, but I've been so busy.
For me, I keep telling him like I have to mentally be in the like a good state to be like, okay, this is what I'm watching. Like, like I like there are days where he's like, let's watch Dune 2, and I'm just because he's already seen it. He
Yeah,
wants to see it again. And I'm just like, I'm too tired. This isn't gonna work.
yeah.
Like,
You don't
if
want to
it's
fall asleep
yeah,
or
there's like
something
all these
like.
reasons why I'm like, it's not time yet.
And you've never read the books or anything like
No, I
that. No,
haven't.
it's gonna get wild. So
Really?
it's like just get ready.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it gets wild.
Okay.
But if once you get watching the second Dune, just if you ever have the time, do me a favor and watch the original Dune.
Okay.
because it's wild.
You know, it took me a lot of attempts to finish Dune, just like Dune
Dude,
1.
one
Yeah.
was it like an airplane thing? Like
How
you were
did
just
you
like, okay,
know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like whenever people tell me that, it's just like, did you finish it on a plane? Like,
It was told okay, so yeah. So there were times in the plane and it was a long flight, so I kept falling asleep and then I would wake up and then I'd be like, okay, where was I? And then I just like kept going back to finish Dune. But
it's
I got like the whole concept and idea of it. So, but I'm glad I did actually take multiple takes because I don't think I would have been able to absorb all of it in one take.
I could see that. I know a lot of people that just saw it once and they were like, "Oh, this was kind of boring," or
Yeah,
"This like I didn't, it wasn't for me." But I feel like there was a lot in it, but you
yeah,
just kind of had to like take it in, right?
absorb it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that happened to my boyfriend too. He saw it once and then he was like, I don't know if I really liked it. And then he like read into it and he started like learning more about like what he had saw and then he saw it again and then he's like, no, I love this movie.
yeah. It's crazy. Because I read the books like a long time ago, and I was like, I've been waiting for this moment for a
Yeah,
long time, and so when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, this is legit.
yeah.
And I don't know if you saw, they're making a TV show
Are
about
they?
the Benny Gesserit.
Oh, I don't know.
So Paul's mom, you know how
Okay.
they're like the crazy witches.
Hmm.
They're making a TV show about that, and they're like making other projects around the same world.
Okay.
Because if you read the books, it's like insane how expansive that universe is.
Okay, so there's just like a lot going on that it can't fit into just like a movie basically.
Yeah, and for me, it's a good thing because there's more work.
And you get like side stories and stuff and you get to like really understand what the movies are about and everything. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah, it's gonna be sick.
Okay, so you're talking about someone named Beck.
Yeah, Matt Beck. He
Okay.
he worked on the original Dune.
Yes.
So I interviewed with this guy, and he came from like um his parents were kind of like working class people in Boston. So whenever he saw somebody that came from like a working class background, I feel like he identified.
Right.
So me and him like talk, and he had this little dog named Coco with him, and like he goes everywhere with that dog. And like it was just a conversation, and then he's like, you know what, you're hired, start tomorrow. And
That's so Hollywood.
I know the dude's all Hollywood. Like
Yeah, like
he,
nobody does that anymore. They're like you have to
no,
do the paperwork and like do the background check and
you, you're gonna laugh when I say when I tell you this, but now that you say it, like it's Hollywood. I literally, it was in his office, and he had like a black leather couch.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Casting couch.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then he like had a control that like closed the door.
Oh,
And so when you say Hollywood, I was
yeah.
like, maybe I got into some shit.
Yeah, maybe it was a test.
Yeah, I know. It was like, uh, um,
Okay, so he told you to start working for him and you're doing PA work.
yeah, PA and receptionist. I was like literally picking up the phone, which
Yeah.
it's it it's so funny they had me doing that because it was literally all like spam calls all day. Like there was no like actual calls,
People calling you.
but it was like, oh, go get groceries and stuff, and like,
Like errands and stuff.
yeah, fix the storage room, or can you go get this for me, stuff like that. And I got to work with some really cool people that had work on like stuff that I had seen growing up, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I would start asking them questions about it, and they were like super open about teaching me what they did and how to do it myself.
Yeah.
Um, and he was a big example of that because like my first week, I remember it was like Friday. It's like, you know, and he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, new guy, do you know how to use cameras?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know how to use cameras." He's like, "Okay, cool. On Monday, you need to drive to Orange County and meet me here at like 5 a.m." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Have you ever seen a call sheet?" And at the time, I had it, and so he sent me a call sheet, and he's like, "All right, we're gonna go shoot something." Which part of VFX, a lot of people think you're just in front of a computer, but it's really important for us to be on set.
BFX.
Yeah, Like,
Okay.
so I work in the visual effects industry, which is like we make CGI and all the stuff that isn't in the camera that they shot, like any additional that stuff that's added digitally.
Yeah.
That's the industry I work at, and so it's important for us to for people who work in VFX to be on set because there needs to be someone to say like, hey, we should shoot it this way because if you don't, the VFX is gonna look like shit,
Okay.
or or hey, we need a green screen here because so and so,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also a lot of like data that needs to be gathered for the people to actually do the work. And you've probably seen in movies they have that like gray ball and that like has that shiny thing on it.
No.
Oh, well, it's like a thing. Maybe someone who's listening has seen that.
Yeah.
And so they'll usually shoot that and somebody like stands in front of the camera and they'll like go like this.
Okay.
It's like synonymous with VFX and a lot of people are always like, "What's that for?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?" And there's a reason why. It's usually when, if you shoot something and Optimus Prime is supposed to be in that shot, you need to have reference of where the lighting is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what that's for.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Just like when I think about how when like artists when they paint things and like they need to like keep the light in this, like let's say they come back to it, they need to keep the light in the same place to continue that painting so that lighting's like, let's say they're drawing with the lighting and shading and stuff.
Hmm.
That makes sense, kind of, I
Yeah. It and
think.
it's some VFX people are like, no, it's not like that kind of stuff at all, and some people
Okay.
do agree with that, like
Yeah.
sentiment that it.
Also, I know that I think I've heard in like movies or like in like behind the scenes stuff how like sometimes some stuff doesn't make sense. Like in the universe, in the actual like living world, that light can't be coming from that direction or something like that. I
Yes.
don't know who I've heard that say that. I think it was like a scientist or something who was like, there's like, it might have been like Titanic or something where they're just like saying how like that wherever the light was coming from or the sun was like shining like wouldn't have made sense during
It
that time
yeah.
around that.
It
Yeah.
and there's so much of that, and it's interesting too because there's like sometimes the people that do the visual effects are aware of this, and it comes down to whoever is running the project, like the director or the producers, to be like, no, 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 put the sun right there,
Yeah.
and then VFX people are like, no, it doesn't make sense
Yeah.
because so and so, and they're like, no, make it make sense, and it's like, okay, whatever
Yeah,
you want, you're paying us.
true. That makes
um,
sense.
yeah, that have politics again. There's a
Okay.
lot of politics in my industry.
Those are the politics.
Yeah.
There's politics everywhere though.
Y-
But yeah, in the entertainment industry it's very like um I think the entertainment industry is a reflection, like we were talking about how like a lot of people project their failures. Let's say they wanted to go in the entertainment industry, they project if they failed, they just blame it on LA and Hollywood being a shitty place to live. And in reality, it's more just like you're just mad because it didn't work out for you.
yeah. It's a hard industry to get into, and like I'll be the first to say I was like absolutely lucky that I was in the right place in the right time,
Yeah, for
and I
sure.
and I was given that opportunity, and I am forever grateful to all the people involved. Um, but for some people, it's like there's so much involved into trying to get in, and we talked about nepo babies earlier. Like, there's so many, there's so much of that in this industry where it
Right.
was like, oh, this person's my son. It's like,
Teach
cool.
them this,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah. How did you don't have to fully be honest because I know like I don't want your job to be affected by anything, but if you can, like how did you feel about the writer's strike?
I my like emotional opinion of it is that it was very difficult for a lot of people in the industry because um there was a lot of people that went unemployed during the strike, but I think it was completely necessary, and any strike moving forward, I think is completely necessary because of the conditions and the like how much people are getting paid in the industry.
Right.
Um, the, these are jobs that are becoming unlivable. Uh, you know, back in the day, you had people that were able to afford a house by being writers on like TV shows or writers on films,
Right.
and now I feel like it's become so like their jobs are so exploited that it's unlivable. I think I heard a story of like one of the guys that wrote The Bear
Okay.
had to like ask somebody like that he knew for money to rent a suit to go to the Emmys.
Oh man.
That's crazy. Like
Yeah.
that to me is crazy. And I know writers myself that a lot of their job ends up being thrown away anyway and unpaid for. Like they have to do a lot of work and then they go to a studio and they're like, here, and the studios would be like, okay, can you make these changes? And like they'll go do it for free, thinking like, oh, this is gonna get the project off the ground.
Right.
Then they take it to the studio and they're like, oh, you know what? We'll think about it.
Yeah. I
That,
can see that's like frustrating and annoying.
yeah,
I guess like when I think about it, and I'm trying to think of life as you grow up. I feel like you start to see life differently, and you start to try to understand things a little better. What I'm getting at is when that writer strike was happening, I was like, fuck those people. They're assholes anyway. Like, they're all Nepo babies, like,
yeah,
But it's not all of them. It's probably a good amount, but like,
yeah,
there are some people that are like decent people who were affected that actually, really needed that, or they
yeah.
actually worked hard and stuff.
And they're like struggling and all that stuff. I think like in any industry in any walk of life, like things are more complex than what we see
Exactly.
them all like off the get go. And like I think I've gained like a clearer perspective on the film industry because when I used to look at it from the outside, it was like you kind of glamorize it, but then when you're in it, you kind of see things differently.
Yeah.
And with the writer strike, it was what I saw was that a lot of people that were like in the front lines and stuff were usually like the people that are like down to earth because my understanding of the statistics of it is that only like a small percentage or like have constant employment
Mhm.
within the writers, and I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah,
I was gonna say another reason I was frustrated with the writer's strike was because when I have been, I mean, I don't know when this happened, probably within like the last 8 years. A lot of movies had either a boring storyline, it was a sequel, it was a prequel. There was like no original storyline or
yeah,
original stories that were being told. And I think that also frustrated me with a lot of the things that I was seeing on TV shows, on movies. And I was just like, yeah, like it's a lot of it, in my opinion, is just a bunch of white people repeating the stories that they think is going to work, and it's not enough people of color that are telling authentic stories. Do you know who Leo Gonzalez is?
I've heard the name. Yeah,
He's like an influencer, but he does a lot of like comedy sketches and clips and stuff.
I think I've
And
seen his thing.
so
Yeah,
he recently did one of how Latinos in movies are always portrayed speaking like Spanglish,
hmm,
and like, he gets all serious. He's like, brother, but what about mama? What about
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and like he's just like saying, like, going back and forth with his English and Spanish, and like, what about like, I don't know, like he'll just say like some dumb shit that'll be like so typical for Hollywood to write in for a Latino's experience. And it's like so frustrating because either a whitewashed Latino wrote that, or like some white person thinks that that's just all we are. And it's just like,
yeah. Oof.
that
Yeah,
kind of like would frustrate me when I was thinking about the writer's strike. But I think it's also important to look at like different
yeah.
perspectives of different people.
I, I you know, I wish there was a lot more diversity in our industry. And me working in it, it's crazy because you don't see a lot of like Latinx people or any POC. Like, there's not that many.
Yeah.
It's like abysmal.
Right.
Where when like whenever you work with someone, you'll like spot them right away, and you'll be like,
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be like 100 people, and it'll be like three of us, and then we'll all be like, we
Yeah.
all kind of like clock each other, like, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
for sure.
But I, it's crazy again with the politics. Um, yeah, I can confirm a lot of like the stuff in Hollywood that's been coming out. It's, you know, more than likely a white writer writing Latinx person
Right.
or a person of color.
Yeah.
And I've worked on projects where that's been the case.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like you feel the cringe.
Yeah.
And
I said that too loud. Sorry.
no, and I'll tell you, there was one instance
Go ahead.
where like I stood my ground, because usually like I try to be political and be like, you know, sometimes I don't say anything, or sometimes I'll just be like, hey, that's kind of fucked up. But in this one, I was like, hey, in my position, I just don't have the power to be able to be like, hey, we should change the storyline, unless somebody comes up to me and be like, hey,
Like, ask for your
yeah,
opinion.
which has happened. There was one instance where like they had to re-ADR an actor.
What's
And,
that?
like, so basically they messed up the lines when they filmed. And so what they were going to do is re-record that same actor say different lines. And so they rewrote the script, and then they were like very shyly about it. They were like, "Hey, Javier, um, I know this isn't your job, but you speak Spanish, right?" And it was like, "Can you check this dialogue to see if it's good?"
Yeah.
And then I was like, "No." So then I just told them like maybe they should say this instead. And I was like,
Yeah.
"That's cool. At least they asked me, you know," and
Yeah.
they're very respectful about it. But there was one instance, I worked on I can't say names, but uh, there was one instance of like indigenous people being represented in this project, and the way they were being represented was like it was very very problematic, like
Yeah.
very extremely problematic. And so I told like my immediate producer, like, hey dude, this is messed up. I know I can't say anything about it, but you can.
Yeah.
So if you can, please. And you know, no one did anything about it because, of course, um, that dude was white, so I don't think he cared much. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like, at least
At
I
least
said,
you voiced your opinion.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
And I tried to get my name off the project too, but they also didn't allow me to. But yeah, this one, and it was. I'll tell you a story about it that I find very funny. We
I
went.
can't believe you tried to get your name off of the project.
Well, I'll tell you something even funnier. The director tried to get most of our names off the project
Okay.
just because they're very bitter and angry and like a horrible person. Um,
About just like how the movie came out or how people reacted to the movie
um,
or like they just weren't like happy.
just not happy in general. Just
Okay.
not a happy camper at all. But yeah. So we went to shoot in Mexico, this movie, and so they had we went to like uh, a jungle in Mexico, and it was supposed to be the Amazon.
Okay.
Um, and so you have these indigenous people there,
Yeah.
and uh, they're like they had this one guy, like a white-sicken actor.
White-sicken.
Yeah, in like uh brown face, I guess.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And I remember standing
People
in
are
the
still
jungle.
doing that.
Yeah,
Okay.
crazy. 2024.
Yeah.
And the Mexican crew, so that land is like literally owned by indigenous people, like the Chol people.
Yeah.
And I made friends with this guy named David that's from there.
Mm.
And you know, we're like all hanging out. We're just like we're like sitting by some rocks, and like the guy comes out, and David's just like, "What is that?" And I was like, "I just want to like I don't know what to tell you." And
Yeah.
he's like, "That's so funny. That's so messed up." And so the Mexican crew recognizes the actor because he's like a known actor over there.
Uh,
They're dying, dude. They were like, they were laughing their asses off. They're like, "Oh my god, is that this guy? Oh my god!" And one of the camera guys, who's like Mexican, he goes up to the guy and he's like, "Hey, they forgot to put the bone right here." And I was just like, "Wow, this is happening."
my gosh.
Yeah,
That's so cringe.
it's super cringe.
I hate that's what I'm saying. Like there's no like authenticity, original storylines, at least from there's like probably a good amount of movies that I've seen maybe, but like I feel like I keep running into like the same just like sounds it seems like the same story. It's like not original or it's just like a Marvel movie or it's just like a prequel or a sequel.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know exactly what you feel, and I think that the current box office, it's like people are tired, and
Yeah,
that's why movies aren't making what they used
it's
to.
true.
Because why would I pay like $20 to see something I've already seen or something
Yeah.
that I'm not gonna be happy?
Do you think any of that like well, obviously the movie theaters are affected by like streaming and stuff. So, I mean, do you think the money's just more going to like Netflix and like Amazon Prime or whatever, like Hulu?
Just based off like what work is out there, there's a lot of money in streaming services, but I know for a fact like movies pull in a lot of money. It's just that I think when like you know people say like oh people don't want to watch superhero movies anymore or people don't want to watch action movies anymore. I just don't think people want to watch bad movies anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting take. You know, before you continue, we'll come back to that. But my friend had told me not too long ago, he was like, you know, like with Yelp and stuff, like us as people, we just don't want to even explore or try different foods. We want to make sure that it's like 100% going to be a good meal. Like, you know, obviously now
Yeah.
I feel like you don't have the choice to take that risk because like food is so expensive. But like
Yeah.
back in the day before there was like ratings and things like that, people were just able to try like what's good, you know, and
Yeah.
like then find out what they don't like and then things like that. But anyway,
I think there's also you know some truth to that because um I have seen this pattern of like people like a lot of people just gravitate towards what they like
yeah.
in the film industry. So I think that's where a lot of like sequels and stuff like that do really good because people are just like, there's nothing else that I think is good. I
Yeah,
might as well waste my money like on something that I'm already familiar with, I
true.
guess.
I'll never forget how much I hated Hocus Pocus 2.
Oh boy.
It was so bad. Like I couldn't believe what I was watching. I was like, "Oh my God, why did we need to make a sequel about this movie?" Like
Yeah, and especially because like you watch the original and you're just like, this is
it's a
perfect.
perfect
It's like
movie. Just leave it.
just leave it alone. You and it's even funnier to. I've never seen Hocus Pocus 2, but
But you know what I'm talking about, right?
yeah, and it like when I was because I was in a movie that shot in Boston,
Mm,
and what you learn in the film industry is like everybody knows each other,
yeah.
and so if you work like somewhere like Boston, it's the same crew that probably work like that. Like 9 times out of 10, they work a similar like another movie that was just there. And so when I got to Boston, everyone was like, "Oh, we just got off of Hocus Pocus 2." And so I like had questions because I got to go to Salem.
Okay.
And I recommend that town so much. I love that place because I loved the movie as a kid.
Yeah.
And it was like a 20-minute drive from Boston.
Uh-huh.
So you go and you're just like, holy shit, this is exactly what you expect. They're very big on like the witch thing, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
even their police cars have like a witch on them and stuff like that. And the people there are so nice. Um, and so you're like, oh, did they? Because the original movie was shot in Salem, which
Right.
I think gave it like a sense of
Yeah,
authenticity.
yeah,
And then they're like, no, we shot it in Rhode Island, and I was like, why?
yeah.
Who comes up with these decisions?
Yeah. On
And
location.
studios make a lot of weird decisions. I've come to learn in my
When
life.
I went to New York, I found out that Friends was not shot in New York. It was shot in LA.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's, yeah.
It no, it's yeah, it's yeah, this industry is so fake. There's so much fakeness that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about how LA, a lot of going back to kind of what we mentioned, a lot of people get disappointed and they kind of project their failures onto LA, and they like call it names, and they like say, how much it sucks. And I don't know, I'm sure you've experienced people in the industry that say that, right?
Yeah, I see it all the time where like people move here, and even though like let's say they become successful or like they're working in the industry, they're just like, oh, LA sucks. um
Is it like trendy to say that?
I think so. I I truly do think it's in I think it's been in style for a long time.
Yeah, to just hate on LA.
Yeah. um Especially I find it funny because these people are trying to find something authentic in LA, but are also pushing the authentic out of
Out of
LA,
it.
which is, the communities that were already here.
It's like a contradiction, honestly, for
Yeah.
sure. And it's like, just like how you're saying how people say, oh, it's so hard to make friends in LA, but it's really a lot of the people they're making friends with are the people that are also transplants, not from LA.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And usually these people, like, they don't call it making friends, they call it networking.
That's
And
a popular
yeah,
term in the
let me get your Instagram, let me get your TikTok, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's always like, dude, you don't want to get to know me.
It's always work.
Yeah, you always want to see what you can get out of me. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like crazy because like when you talk to like LA people from LA, I almost said LA locals, but I don't know. I just don't like saying it too much. But when you talk to people from LA, you get people that are like more authentic, more like they don't give a shit about Hollywood, more like they don't care about networking.
Yeah, they're like, I know a good taco spot, like that's on the street, like let me hook you up. Yeah, and on the flip side of things, I've worked with a lot of people that are transplants.
Yeah.
But they've been here for a long time.
So they're like they got accustomed to like what LA is, and like I know people like that too that actually respect the city that they're in, and like respect the people and the community and the cultures that are here.
Yeah,
it's a big city.
Yeah, I if you don't like a place, and you have the opportunity to go somewhere else and work, like, don't stay here and hate. Just go somewhere else.
Like nobody wants more people not from LA here.
Yeah, it's already so full, and rent's already so high.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, we need to build that wall.
The California wall.
Yeah.
And
I'm just joking now.
it's funny because it's triggering for me.
If I have to,
as an immigrant.
Clarify. That's my joke, though. I keep saying that joke, and I don't know if it like passes through people's heads, like,
It's fine because we're brown.
I'm
but
sorry.
no, you're good.
You're like, I'm triggered right now.
Triggered right now. Yeah, there's so much work out there in the film industry that's not in LA. So, and I respect the people because I work with friends and they're just like, you know what? I didn't like LA. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'm like, good for you, man.
Make that move.
Make that move. Get a cheap house. Buy a house, which you can't do here.
Where do you hear the entertainment industry? Like, where are they kind of going right now? If they're not in LA, Hollywood.
Like
you mentioned Atlanta, like
Mhm.
that's the spot too, right?
Yes. So I have a theory. A lot of people say like, oh, the film industry is dying in LA, but it's been dying for the last 25 years. It's never going to go away, I don't
Okay.
think, because a lot of people that have money don't want to leave LA.
Yeah.
And usually those people are like, should I go shoot in Atlanta or should we shoot at Warner Brothers in Burbank?
Yeah.
Warner Brothers it is. So there's that, like that aspect of it. Like there's still a lot of work here. I think Atlanta happened because one, they have a tax incentive. So a lot of what dictates what happens in the film industry, at least in Hollywood, is money.
Taxes.
Yeah, and taxes is a big thing. So Atlanta did a insane tax incentive that I have friends from Atlanta that have told me like that tax incentive has brought in like endless amount of work, but it's also like not beneficial to the state because the state's basically financing
Yeah.
films, and it's insane because film studios have money.
Yeah.
They just don't want to spend it. So it's tax incentives. New York also has one, so there's a lot of work in New York. I've had the opportunity to work in New York. Mad respect to anybody who works in New York. That place is insane.
Do you like New York?
I love New York.
You do.
I did not
Okay.
like working in New York. Do you like New
I
York?
don't like New York so far. I'm willing to like go back and give it another shot. I just didn't like it. It's too fast paced for me.
It's fair. I think like it's not
Also,
for
the
everyone.
pizza's really hyped. Like you expect to go to New York and be like, oh damn, this is like the best pizza. It's so cheap. And in reality, one thing I've learned about like traveling so far when I've traveled is that LA has a lot of authentic places and we get kind of the best of everything.
That is true, and I think like because it's LA, we get a lot of like bad rap for like we don't have good food from places like New York.
We have the best Mexican food.
We do. Yeah,
we do.
like I've it's hard to find good Mexican food in New York. There is, but you have to find it.
Yeah, seriously.
But here, like, we have good pizza too.
We do have good pizza, and we have a lot of people from New York that come to LA and have a store here. So it's like it's just as good, honestly.
And in New York, I know they're like, oh, it's the water, and there's like pizza spots that literally like ship water, to make the dough.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, that seems wasteful, but New York people are gonna hate me for saying this, but because I was in Boston for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Boston has some of the best pizza I've ever had. It's crazy. Like, and I never thought of Boston as like a food town.
Yeah.
Some of the best food I've had is in Boston.
You know, some of the best food I've had other than LA is in Chicago.
Yeah, and like you don't hear like, oh, go to Chicago for food. You know, it's like, what's in Chicago? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I bet. I can't remember Chicago food, but I bet it's bomb.
It is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like different types of food. I mean, I was just really pleased with the restaurants that we ate at, and I just can't say the same for New York. I'll give it another shot someday.
I think I really respect your opinion just because based on what I know about you, you've traveled way more than I have in life. And so I think like you would know. Yeah. But like just for my knowing, where is the place that you've gone to that has the best food?
In Chicago or just in LA or in general?
No, in general, like the world.
Okay. Well, I just came back from Thailand.
Was it bomb?
It was so bomb.
Oh man.
So good. But I was telling people that a lot of our Thai food here is actually similar to like how they make it in
What?
Thailand. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's not like what usually happens.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you'll get like a little bit or
Well, that's what
something.
I'm saying. Like we have so much like we have a lot like so much diversity in their
Yeah.
city that like you get immigrants coming from all over the world to live here and open their business and then share their recipes and their foods and like we kind of get the best of everything. But also, I would say Yucatan has some of the best food I've
Oh
ever
shit, yeah.
fucking had.
Yeah,
Like
dude.
I still like can't forget like the flavors and just like the freshness of all the food. Um, so yeah, I would say Yucatan. Now I think about
That's cool.
it.
Yeah, no, I think it's like also in a region we kind of, for like that's in Mexico that we kind of ignore
Yeah,
the food of, or like we don't get a lot of it
yeah.
here. Um, yeah, that's cool.
I would say also there's like so many different parts of Mexico, and there's so many different types of like meals and recipes like all over the country. So a lot of it's different, you
Yeah,
know, like in Yucatan they use like the banana leaves to make tamales and in, you know, like Mexico City they
it's like
use like
corn,
yeah, the
corn leaf.
corn.
Yeah,
So it's just like there's different types, just like I'm sure here like, you know, we make pizza different on the
Th-
East Coast and
yeah.
like
Then what it is?
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good example.
Um, because I live in El Sereno now, and you
Uh-huh.
know El Sereno because
Yeah.
you know.
I went to school there.
Oh, that's funny.
I,
Where do you go to school?
you know, in Huntington, there's a private school called Our Lady of Guadalupe.
No
I
way.
went there for 3 years.
I live off of Huntington, so it's
Okay.
like I live right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't give your cross streets.
No,
You're
I
gonna
won't.
you're
Yeah.
gonna have people the I'm being seriously stalkers are gonna follow you. No, I'm just kidding. Uh,
All the people that are from Highland Park are like, oh shit, he's right there.
yeah, so I went to school there for 3 years. My aunt lived in she lived on not actually my uncle lives on Collis still. And then my aunt lived on fuck, what's that? It starts with a B. Anyway.
It gets stuck. But so you went to school there. The best pizza I've had is from El Sereno,
Is
which
this
is
a place by Huntington?
it's called Doughbox, and now
Okay.
it's in Highland Park
Oh, okay.
because they lost their location to a coffee shop.
Okay.
And so like
Dough
apparently
box.
they were there for a long time, and then like the owner was like, you guys aren't paying enough rent, I'm gonna get a new tenant. And
Yeah.
so they got kicked out, and now they share their location with a panaderia that's in Highland Park.
Okay. Which
That's
one?
It's by the lodge. It's like right off of it's like closer to the bowling alley.
Okay. So the Highland Park Bowl. Huh.
It's
I don't
like
think I know what you're talking about.
it's like by Bank of America. There's like a Bank of America there.
Oh yeah, that's like Figueroa
Yeah.
and
It's
on
fit.
Figueroa.
I think so.
It's not Delicias, right?
I think
Oh,
so.
it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
because like I
I was
said,
like, he probably knows what Delicias is.
well,
So
it's funny because I like kind of hung out in Highland Park during
okay,
high school, but didn't know it that well.
okay,
So I just like, oh, the panaderia there.
okay.
Well,
Yeah, that's right next to Bank of
oh,
America.
so dope box is in the same
No way.
panaderia.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, I always like think when I drive by on Figueroa, I'm always just like, God, I fucking like this place is like a freak show. Like, it feels just like there's so many people that are walking on the street that are clearly not from LA. And I don't know
Yeah.
how to make that like make more sense, but LA people know.
No, I totally get where you're coming from, and I also get
Like ick.
that same vibe, and it's interesting too because like I live in El Sereno,
Yeah.
and El Sereno hasn't had that boom yet,
Yet.
but
It's in progress. I see it when
yeah,
I'm on Huntington. Like I see like things happening. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in South Central, and like South Central people would always say like we're never gonna get gentrified, like never, it's
Yeah.
impossible, it's never gonna happen.
It's happening though, right?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely happening. I remember some of like homies I grew up with that like like lived closer to USC than I
Uh,
did because I lived a lot more south. And they were like, no, they're never gonna like. There was like a street, MLK. Like they're never like white people are never gonna cross MLK. And then it was like,
they're
yeah,
crazy.
and then like white people moved next door to him, and it's like, ah, shit. And then it's just like one family, two, and then I think there, especially because of students,
Yeah,
because it's cheap to live there, or was at
right.
least. But like where my parents live, that's like deep South Central. It was always like it's never gonna get gentrified. It's impossible. It's never gonna get gentrified. And like on the block where my parents live, there's white people.
Yeah,
And I remember the
it's
day,
weird.
like I went to Home Depot on like Slauson, the one in front of like the Slauson Mall,
Hmm.
and that's like a level of hood that was like you never think you see white people, and then one day you're at Home Depot and it was like white people shopping,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh shit.
You know, it was a trip. Okay, so Highland Park it was predominantly Latino community. And like, like I was telling you, like the avenues were like a few blocks away from where I was living. And it was just like crazy. But when the gentrification started happening, I started seeing white people like walking their dogs, and then I started seeing black people, which in a Latino neighborhood is like not usually, in a lot of them, at least from my experience, it's like not too common.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's black people, there's white people, like what?
It's kind of funny, but like you look at how we grew up, and it's funny because I do get what you're saying, because
Yeah,
like East LA
yeah,
was like predominantly like Latin people,
yeah, for sure,
and I think it's interesting now because LA used to be like very segregated. I feel
for
like
sure.
like K Town was like Korean people and
Yeah,
like maybe a few Latin people like here and there.
like Salvadorians and
Yeah,
shit. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, in South Central, you had both. Like you had the like black people and you had Latin people.
right.
Um, and a lot of also Belizean people.
Right. But you get what I mean in like Northeast LA, East LA, it's
Yeah,
like
I know
mostly
exactly
just
what
like
you mean.
Latino people.
And so when it's funny because when you start seeing people of like different walks of life, it's like, oh, it's
This is good, right?
yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's 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 crazy. I think LA's changed so much, and when I moved to El Sereno, it was like a conscious move to be like, I was trying to find a place to live
Yeah.
that was for me not in the valley, but close enough to the valley because of the film industry,
Yeah.
and um, I consciously made the move because being from LA, I was like, what neighborhood?
Don't go to the west side.
Yeah, don't go to the west side, and also like what neighborhood is like predominantly Latin people and um like where I won't be making an impact of like gentrification, So
Yeah.
I moved into like a mom and pop, like they own the house
Mhm.
and they've owned it for years, and it's like I'm renting it from them, and like we have a good relationship and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
even in my neighborhood, like in the short time that I've lived there, it's like next door my neighbors were like Latin, and then the owner sold the house, and then right away like white people moved in it, and I was like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing the same thing you guys saw in Highland Park, where it's like white people walking their dog
Yeah.
at night, and to me it's always like it it's always kind of like surprising.
Yeah. It's like it must be nice
Yeah, it must be nice, and
to not have a worry in the world.
and it's also funny to me because I always have this thing like having grown up in LA where like you go to you know let's say you have like a week off for whatever reason, like you're unemployed, whatever, you go to a
Yeah.
coffee shop in like the afternoon and there's always white people there doing nothing, just on a laptop randomly, and I'm always like,
Yeah.
what do you
What are
people
they
do?
doing?
What do you do?
Yeah.
Like you're doing puzzles in the middle of the day, like how do you make money? I want
Yeah. I want that.
Yeah, we all want that. Like I want to just talk to them and be like, what's the
What
secret?
do you do? Yeah.
Herbalife, like what is it? Bitcoin, I
Is
don't
it
know.
really just because you're white?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. That must be frustrating. Do you ever feel like Do you ever get frustrated of working with so many white people? Or you can't disclose that?
I, for political reasons, I'll say no. White people
Okay.
are wonderful. No,
So for like, okay, like to make it more political, are you about freeing Palestine?
I stand for peace, and I think what's happening over there, I think there should be like a ceasefire for sure. But um, it can be very frustrating in the sense that sometimes they don't, like you said, sometimes like a lot of stories are like, oh, this is so stereotypical, or
Right.
this is like messed up,
Yeah.
and a lot of times they don't see that, and they're just like, to me, what frustrates me the most, honestly, is like sometimes like Hollywood will write things to like try to tuck out our like brown heartstrings and being like, oh, we'll give them stories about immigration.
Right. Kind of like I was watching, I guess this came to my mind because I just saw a clip about the blind side.
Uh huh.
Um, and it was like Sandra Bullock, being the white savior and stuff. And it's like at that time period, that movie was supposed to pull at everyone's heartstrings, like, oh, she's
Oh,
such
shoot.
a nice person, she's a great person, and like this poor black man, like, he can't do anything for himself,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
he needs somebody to help him. And I just feel like Hollywood still gets stuck in that like
Pattern. Yeah.
pattern of doing like the savior, or like, oh, her mom's gonna get like deported if she doesn't like, do this or
Yeah.
whatever, something like
It's
that. And
always
it's like,
something. Yeah.
yeah, something like that, like you're saying, is trying to like pull at our heart.
And so whenever like a movie does that, and like, we're watching the movie with team members, there's a lot of like older people that I work with, like, I guess they get swept up by that, like, oh, their parents gonna get deported, oh,
Yeah.
and then they look at me like I'm supposed to feel that.
Like they almost like romanticize like this like feeling of
Yeah,
like, oh, if my mom was in that situation, like I would feel so like,
yeah,
and it's like, no, like it would be better if a person was authentically telling the story or writing the story, because that shit does really happen.
yeah, and yeah, it's like you don't need to tuck at our heartstrings. Like, we live this kind of shit day
Yeah.
to day. Like, we all have family members that are going through some shit. We've all
Yeah.
um and I saw a lot of it in film school too, with like film professors, where like they'll show us movies like that, like, you know Mi Familia or stuff like that, and they'll be like, so what's your take on this, what do and it's like, dude, okay.
Have you ever experienced people using you as a token? Do you mind being a token sometimes? And I'm sure it's so complex because it's like there's not that many like brown people in the writing rooms or in the entertainment industry in general. So like I'm sure those people that are in the entertainment industry, they're like kind of just running with it.
Yeah, I
But also like I'm sure they've been like tokenized as well.
yeah, it it gets so interesting because it sometimes when there's a lot of like, when you're in a production, it's a lot of people, especially being on set. When you like see other people of color, it's literally like you'll lock eyes and you'll go like this, like, yeah, okay, we're here,
We
cool,
made it.
we made it, cool. But it does happen, and I find it happens mostly with like a lot of old white dudes, um, where they'll be like, Javier here's Mexican, he knows, and it's like, dude, come on.
Good for you.
Yeah,
You hired a Mexican.
yeah, I don't be like, oh, my friend here is white.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but it does happen. I the the most messed up moment I had with that is like when they had like those indigenous loincloth people. There was like,
In that movie you're talking about?
yeah, there was like one main character, right? And apparently they couldn't find someone to cast the guy, and a producer literally comes up to me like
Oh my
we're all in
god,
an office space,
no.
and he's like, "Hey Javier, if they don't find someone, we're just gonna look at you one of these days and just put you in that suit." And my face is just like, "Bro, no, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like that's
Yeah.
fucked up." Um, but that does happen. There's a lot of weirdness in the film industry, and uh,
Things that they think are funny and they're not.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that.
Did
Like
you ever see Black Panther 2?
I did.
You know how they shot like the indigenous people? I forget what they're called. I think they even shot it in Yucatan too.
Yeah.
Um, how did you like? Did you think that they portrayed it well, even though it was obviously like made up, but like still the fact that they were indigenous? Like, what did you think about that?
You know, in that movie, I think they did a good job because
I think so too.
they did research.
Yeah,
They went
it
in,
matters.
yeah, and they did research. And from what I heard, because I worked with some people that worked in that movie, is they really made an effort to like ask the people that were acting and working in it as well.
Yeah,
And they also had like experts.
yeah.
In the movie that I worked on, there was none of that. And on top of that, uh, I think like they hired some linguists, some like white person linguists to try to make up a language.
Oh no.
And I don't think it was ever shown in the movie, but it was like pure gibberish.
Oh god.
And I
That's
was
so
like, yeah, I was like,
embarrassing.
that's crazy. Like that's so messed up. Like on top of that, you paid somebody to make up some shit. Like you,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, this industry's crazy. I think that movie was an exception with that because I've been in those rooms where like in terms of representation, you're just like
Yeah.
you guys really missed the mark. And I whenever I watch movies and I see stuff like that, I'm just like, having been in those rooms, I'm like,
Yeah.
I know who was there and who made the decisions, and like I already know there's not a lot of diversity in the film industry, so it's like, oh, it's kind of obvious why things are presented
Right.
the way they are.
I mean, I feel like for people that, it's so sad that it's like new to have more people of color in the entertainment industry, like on the back end of everything.
Yeah.
Um, but I just feel like, and what I'm trying to get at is like people hating on J Lo. um,
What she do?
because I have no idea.
Yeah, I've seen some of that, and I was like,
I'm so
what she
confused
do?
by it, but
Yeah,
it's more like, from what I'm understanding, it's people that are hating that she's not authentic and that she uses the Bronx to kind of like sell things, and she doesn't give back to her community and stuff.
hmm.
And that might be true. I don't
Yeah, I
know
don't
enough
know.
about
That's
JLo or care that much about her, but I do know that I loved Selena. That was like my favorite movie as a
that
little
movie's sick.
girl.
Yeah,
And I loved like, a bunch of other movies that she did, when I was growing up.
yeah,
Um, and I just think that like she paved a lot of, paths for people, especially Latinas, to like get into this entertainment industry. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it wasn't all her, but she was a person that was a good influence on that path, you
yeah.
know?
I, I would agree with that because I mean, you look at like the history and us watching movies growing up. There was no one
Yeah.
like before J Lo. Like who I
Right?
can't even think of like another Latina who was there doing shit. You know?
Right. And it's like it would have sucked if they would have casted a fucking white girl for Selena. And at
Yeah,
least like she is a Latina, and I mean she's probably not the greatest person, but I also think there's a lot of hate and sexism in that, like this hate towards J-Lo. And I think, there has to be a lot of men that are fucking assholes to people and they don't give back to their community, and they probably represent and use their community a lot.
yeah.
But I also feel like because she's a woman, like it's just an easy target to hate on her.
I I'm in the same boat. I think the same things. It's like with women in the entertainment industry, it's like they just have the focus on them, and it's
Yeah.
like, the conversation's all about them, and you don't hear a lot of that stuff about Latinx men in the film
Or just
industry, or
men
like,
in general,
yeah,
you know?
and you, you know, with the Me Too movement, a lot of stuff came to light that was like, oh shit.
Even then, people still don't want to accept that men are fucking like, rapists, and like that some men are like not as good as they think. And like, I honestly think like Brad Pitt beat up his wife, and like, I don't think he's a good guy either.
Yeah, I will say this. I think that this industry has a lot of huge personalities, and um the way things work, it's very easy to get burnt out.
I'm sure.
It's very easy to get burnt out, and there's always somebody that's trying to get something out of you. And so if J-Lo's behaving a certain way, I'm sure she has her reasons, because it's tough.
Yeah. I'm sure you have to set boundaries and shit, like, especially being like a big celebrity just like her.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure, I'm not excusing her or anything. I'm just saying, like, I'm sure as a woman, you have to set a lot more boundaries than you would if you were a man. And then not only that, but she's also a woman of color. So, like, there's more boundaries that you have to set too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I can't imagine what it was like for her going through this industry, especially because things have gotten better.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still a lot of improvement to go. But I can't imagine what it was like. Like, I hear stories of what the
Yeah.
film industry was from like old timers that tell me, and I was like, holy shit, how are you people alive? Like,
Seriously, it sounds traumatic. It sounds like a lot of people probably have like low key PTSD
yeah,
from just like a bunch of. I'm sure there's like bullying. I can imagine there's like bullying, like taunting. There's a lot of like disrespect.
drugs and
Yeah,
like and
inappropriate
and
acts.
and with how much money people make in this industry, it's very easy to um like hide things.
Yeah,
it,
totally.
like, I've heard so many
I
crazy
mean, look at P.
stories.
Diddy. Oh my
Yeah,
God. What the fuck? He's like a perfect example. He's been hiding shit for so long.
and I feel like all of that, it's already like gone. Like I haven't heard anything. It's just like,
Well, it's because he's hiding, but we'll
yeah,
see what happens. I feel like it's just like a story that's going to continue to unravel.
I yeah, and we'll be there to see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
But so we can close out here, but do you have any advice for anybody looking to be in the entertainment industry? Movies, music? I mean, maybe have you worked in music or
Yeah, I've worked a
okay.
little bit in music. I think that
Would you say don't go to university for film?
the I it's funny. I heard the same advice from Mark Ruffalo. Is like, try to stay in little in as little debt as you possibly can. Whether or not that means you don't go to university or you find alternative ways to finish your university, but I think that's really good advice, because at the end of the day, money gives you freedom to do what you want to do.
Right.
And if you owe money or you have that financial pressure, you have less of an opportunity to do the things you want to do. In terms of getting into the film industry, I would say that just apply, and when you find the opportunity, work hard, because we touched upon nepo babies, and someone gave me like some great advice. That Matt Beck guy, actually, he told me, like, you're gonna see a lot of nepo babies.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a ton of them.
Who have no work experience or
Yeah,
talent, probably.
and some good friends of mine are nepo babies too, and I tend to tell them, like, yo, come on, man.
Who's the nepo baby you hate the most? It's okay. You don't have to tell me.
um
I'll say it for me.
say it.
Um, actually, you know what? I don't say it's like the most. I don't like Will Smith's kids. Just
Yeah.
yeah, I might be projecting. Maybe I'm jealous of them. Um, No, I'm not, because their parents are terrible. They seem like they suck. Um, I also don't like. How do you say? Is it Judd Apatow or Tao?
Apatow, I think. I think I've heard
Apatow.
Apatow.
Okay. I also don't really. I don't like him, so therefore I don't like his daughter or daughters.
I've seen his daughter's like blowing up
She's like
now.
a crazy nepo baby.
Yeah.
Um, I just don't like him. I
Huh.
don't like his movies. It's very like I don't know,
Not
very
for you.
one-sided, very like just white Jewish male comedy, and I'm not all about it.
Huh.
So it's crazy because I grew up watching like his movies.
Yeah, they were like big when we were
Yeah, they were
coming
really
up.
big and like Freaks and Geeks and stuff.
Yeah.
But I just don't like him, and I think like he's not. Me and my boyfriend were just talking about how like Adam Sandler was always like the guy that won the hot girl over at the end.
Yeah.
Judd Apatow tried to do the same thing, and it's just like very unrealistic. Do you remember in that movie with Jonah Hill how he like
Super bad.
super mad
Yeah.
where Emma Stone just like falls in love with him and is like, yeah, let's hang out, and it's like that would never in a million years happen with someone that looks like Jonah Hill.
Especially because I feel like in Superbad it wasn't justified because he did nothing. Like
Yeah.
it was just and she didn't really have that much of a personality. It was
Yeah.
just like
Yeah,
I like
and
you now.
all the women in his movies hardly ever have personalities.
That's
Like it's
fair.
always like the white guys that they're like potheads and stoners and they're just like so funny and like, you know, they ended up getting like this hot girl like in Knocked Up too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, oh, it just happened
The
and
woman
magic.
is just like a nag and she's like not funny and she's like, you know.
Yeah. And then
And
the guy barely puts in any effort and
yeah,
they just end up
and he's
together
just funny.
somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so as I got older, I started seeing that, and I'm like, no, I hate Judd Apatow. He could go.
That's fair. I never like revisited his movies. Like I just saw them
Yeah.
as they were coming out, and I never was like, oh, I need to watch Superbad again or But now that you're telling me this, I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
this makes a lot of sense.
I think about stupid shit like this because I just like I don't like the entertainment industry. Maybe you'll be like one of those people that can like make it better, but I
Can't.
don't. Yeah. Well, maybe
It's
someday.
bad. Maybe someday. I hope. I've met some great people.
I'm sure.
And there
with
is hope.
anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is hope, but yeah, like this last movie I work with, the two directors are from Belgium, and their parents are from Morocco, and it's interesting because whole different experience in life.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yo, I identify with you guys so much because children
Yeah.
of immigrants and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
those guys were really cool.
Yeah.
I would say that. So there's hope. There's hope.
So, okay. Well, we'll close out here. We went over an hour. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
You know, it's crazy. This is, yeah, no questions. I didn't write any questions. We kind of just like flowed off of this, which is cool.
I like it. Yeah,
All right.
that was cool. Thank you.
Thanks.